There is a preparation being made. There is an awakening and an awareness among global elites, common people, billionaires, former generals, current military experts and analysts, economic forecasters, financial experts across the globe. You consult them all and you get one chorus saying the same thing. Something big is happening in our world. And it's not a run-of-the-mill, dramatic, current event issue. It's something unprecedented that is about to burst upon this earth. When, we don't know. We don't set dates. The Bible doesn't point us toward setting dates for any future events. But we can know when the time is near. And we can know that there will actually be a world where this, what we just read here, is possible. Now, what you're going to hear to the stressful mind, to the person who is not at peace with their security in God, for the person struggling with emotional instabilities, the information that I'm going to share would be a difficulty and a challenge if we don't understand the context of this information. The information is quite alarming. I'll just say that to you right out of the gates. What we're about to see will cause many people in this world, when they see it, to experience fear and anxiety. In fact, Jesus said it. He said, speaking of the last days, he spoke of men's hearts failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. So that's most people's response to the global crisis. They look at natural disasters. They look at crazy things that are going on, and their hearts fail them for fear, Jesus said. But it doesn't need to be that way. I do want to raise the alarm bell. I think we all need a collective poke in the eye, a slap in the face, a wake-up call that all of the security and peace, and people say peace, peace, when there is no peace, all of the illusion of civilization, all of the conveniences and freedoms that we've held dear for so long are melting away faster than we ever thought. As you look at global economic instability, terrorism and civil unrest on the rise in urban cities, and you've got the relinquishing of religious freedom and freedom of speech, natural disasters, pestilences is on the rise, wars and rumors of wars, a cultural and moral collapse like the world has never seen before. Let's get into the information, but remember what Jesus also said. He said, many people will experience fear and their hearts will fail them. Let that not be the case. He says, and when these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. Your redemption is drawing near when you see the world falling apart. And it seems that everybody can recognize that things are not going well in this world, that the world indeed seems to be ripping apart at the seams. And I say that just based upon the data and the polling. National Geographic did a survey, and they found that 90% of people expect a catastrophic world event to take place in their lifetime, perhaps as dangerous as any that we have faced since World War II. So he's saying the situation is just as dangerous now. It's more dangerous now than even during the Cold War. I mean, like Cuban Missile Crisis and all the Soviet Union versus the United States, mutually assured destruction, and the stuff many people living today, their whole life was lived during the Cold War, which ended in 1989, 1991, is the situation we face now more dangerous even than that? That's what he's saying here. He's not the only one. We have slid into a new Cold War. Chilling statement from Russian Prime Minister. Risk of nuclear war in Europe growing, warns Russian ex-minister. Then we've got NATO's former deputy military chief in Europe who says NATO-Russia nuclear war possible within a year. Former Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev warned Ukraine's conflict could, quote, unavoidably lead to a nuclear war. UK Sun, experts warn, planet closer to catastrophic World War III than at any time for 60 years. And one more. Sir Richard Shiref was one of NATO's most honored retired generals, said NATO risks a nuclear war with Russia within a year. Now, it's not just Russia, the Cold War reigniting, dangers of World War III and nuclear war just as high as now or higher now than even during the Cold War, but the China situation. And we're going to have a whole session on wars and rumors of wars. I'm just giving you some of the headlines, some of the warnings coming from top global mouthpieces. But how about this one? George Soros said, if there is a conflict between China and a military ally of the United States like Japan, then it is not an exaggeration to say that we are on the threshold of a third world war. Here's another one. Chinese media calls for government to fire shots and ram U.S. warships to teach them a lesson over disputed South China Sea islands. That would be the inauguration, perhaps, of World War III with nuclear-armed China. China also says they are, quote, not afraid to fight war with U.S. NATO countries also began the largest war game in Eastern Europe since the Cold War. We could go on and on with this, and I'm here to tell you, from a historical standpoint, what these folks are saying is not exaggeration. It is not alarmist. These are credible geopolitical, analytical voices saying that the danger now is higher than ever. And that doesn't mean anything is guaranteed. I hope that we will make it through this thing without nuclear war and World War III. I think we all hope that. That would be catastrophic and absolutely unspeakably terrible. But are we recognizing the possibility of such massive events upon this world that would shake the fabric of the civilization of this planet to its very core? Or are we just going along la-di-da-di-da thinking, you know what? Life is going to go on. So stick with me for this whole series, and you'll learn a whole lot about the Bible and the world we live in today. Now, here's a headline for you. A very powerful nuclear blast over the central United States could fry electronics coast to coast. Why shift gears into this topic right now, the frying of electronics? I want to spend a few minutes on the possibility of a grid down scenario when national security experts and preparedness-minded people talk about the most potentially potently dangerous and volatile situations. They point to the loss of power and electricity across the country as being one of the most significant dangers that we face, because there's a number of ways that we could lose our power grid. And without power, there's a well-known maxim in these circles of national security experts and so on. And they say that at any given time, society is only 9 meals away from total bedlam and anarchy and breakdown. 9 meals. That would be 3 days of people being without food, because when you have no electricity, your food in the freezer is getting bad very quickly. You're exhausting very quickly the food that happens to be in the pantry and on your shelves. And of course, the grocery store shelves have been panic bought out and sold out the second things get crazy. And so all of a sudden, the trucks aren't running and making deliveries. The gas stations aren't working. The ATMs aren't working. The banks are closed. Hospitals have no electricity. Running water is out. I mean, think about how long people will be happy without water. I mentioned food first. Water is even more significant. You can imagine the dependence that we have in modern society upon the power grid and upon electricity running our basic utilities that deliver life to us. If that were to go down, it doesn't take very many days for things to really fall apart. Let me share some things with you on that. In 1859, there was what's called a Carrington event, a solar superflare. And that's a massive geomagnetic solar storm. Now, in 1859, it didn't matter that much because there wasn't much electricity, but it did totally fry the telegraph machines at the time. The telegraph had been around for about 15 years at that point. Now, if today we were to witness something else like that, it would be absolutely catastrophic. Take a look at this. The sun could unleash huge super flares that would destroy much of the things we rely on for life on Earth, scientists have warned. Huge flares of energy with the power of 1 billion 1 megaton nuclear bombs, 1 billion nuclear bombs, could destroy our communications and energy systems, they have said. Scientists made the warning after seeing a huge superflare erupt from another star that looks alarmingly like our own sun. And people who look at this said that in 2012 and in 2013, we narrowly missed a significant solar event that could have caused this grid down scenario that we're talking about. In 2008 also, there was a congressional commission that was launched to study the hardening of our power grid. And not just to protect against a solar superflare or a nuclear blast over the central United States, both of which could knock the power out through the whole nation of the United States. And this could happen if you're looking at this from another country as well. This could happen globally. This could happen to any nation. But the commission was called the Commission to Assess the Threat to the United States from Electromagnetic Pulse Attack. And they looked at the possibility of an EMP, electromagnetic pulse attack. And that would be a deliberate, nefarious, harmful foreign actor. Rather than setting off a nuke, they just set off an electronic pulse, and it does the same thing that a nuke would do in terms of destroying the power. It just doesn't destroy physical realm. It's just an electromagnetic pulse that just fries the electricity. The commission warned of catastrophic consequences. If such an attack were to cause a nationwide blackout lasting as long as a year, up to 90% of the American people would die due to starvation, disease, and societal collapse. And it wouldn't even need to last a year. I mean, we'd have total breakdown and mass die-offs happening within weeks and months, other analysts have said. So they're talking 90% if it's up to a year. That apocalyptic, there they go again, apocalyptic scenario is not as far-fetched as it might seem, according to CIA Director James Woolsey. So you might wonder, well, what's been done then to harden the power grid, to protect it? Is it vulnerable? Well, nothing really has been done to protect it from EMP, from electromagnetic pulse, but it's probably even more vulnerable than we want to know or admit. This is truly amazing. CNS News found 2 weeks after North Korea threatened to launch nuclear strikes against the U.S., the Government Accountability Office reported that the federal government has still not implemented all of the recommendations made 8 years ago to prevent catastrophic blackouts caused by an electromagnetic pulse attack. And then we have Zero Hedge, which reported, according to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission's latest report, all it would take to plunge the entire nation into darkness for more than a year would be to knock out a transformer manufacturer, so blow it up, and just 9 out of 55,000 electrical substations on a really hot summer day. One transformer manufacturer, 9 substations. If you can carry out 10 attacks at once on a hot summer day, the country is without power for a year. You might, wow, we're really vulnerable then. Yeah, that's why the Congressional Commission said, hello, we've got to do something about this. Well, the Wall Street Journal did an investigation into the vulnerabilities of the power grid. What they found really concerned them and alarmed them, so they did a nice write-up on this, and it goes like this. Dozens of break-ins examined by the Wall Street Journal show how tens of thousands of substations are still vulnerable to saboteurs. The U.S. electric system is in danger of widespread blackouts lasting days, weeks, or longer through the destruction of sensitive, hard-to-replace equipment. Tens of thousands of smaller substations. Security experts say a simultaneous attack on several of these tens of thousands of smaller substations could destabilize the grid and cause widespread blackouts, as you just heard, just even 9 of them. Most substations are unmanned and often protected chiefly by chain link fences. Many have no electronic security, leaving attacks unnoticed until after the damage is done. Even if there are security cameras, they often prove worthless. In some cases, alarms are simply ignored. Jerry Cawley, head of the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, which writes standards for the grid, was asked at a FERC hearing in June on grid security, well, what keeps him up at night? The expert on this. He says the prospect of 8 or 10 vans going to different sites and blowing things up. Recovery from a coordinated attack, he said, could take weeks or months. The grid was cobbled together during the electrification of the U.S. over the past 125 years. It is a fragile, interdependent system, generally more vulnerable in summer when it is running closer to its limits. It is also at risk during low-demand periods, when power plant operators and linemen perform maintenance. Fewer plants and transmission lines operating means fewer options for delivering electricity during emergencies. Security advisor James Holler said his company, Biden's Consulting, inspected nearly 1,000 substations over the past year for utilities in 14 states. At least half had nothing but a padlock on the gate, he said. No cameras, no motion sensors or alarms. One utility lost a set of substation keys that were in a truck stolen for a joyride. After the truck and keys were recovered, Mr. Haller said the utility didn't change the substation locks. So you can see some pretty significant vulnerabilities there. And again, the potential for very enduring and catastrophic global crises on a number of fronts, as we've seen here, particularly this one, do pose a serious and imminent threat that makes us say it's probably not a matter of if, but when we will witness these sorts of events transpire that will catalyze and really inaugurate the final events that we read about in Revelation 13.